OBS is frustrating. I've
Well,
been
it's
very
it's
lucky
not
I have
it's
not
not
had.
it's not OBS. It's my very stupid Windows update.
That is annoying.
So we are theoretically live. Oh,
Hold on, I will tell you. Tell you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
there
now it
we
says
are.
that video has been removed from the user.
We are
Oh,
theoretically.
there we go. Take two.
Oh, welcome everybody to take two of the Arete Podcast. For
Use
those
take
of you,
two.
well, for those of you watching this after the live stream, yeah, you do not know, but there were 30 minutes of us being live where my microphone was not on, so we just decided to cut it out. So
Cut
we're
it
gonna we're gonna
out.
act like it didn't happen.
For the
So
Spotify listeners, we did the bit from Full House that Dave Coulier did to cut
cut
it
it out.
out.
Also Canadian. But this podcast is brought to you by our friends at the Spur of the Moment podcast, where you can see more of my Canadian compadre here, and also our friends at Stevie Wicks. You can still get your 4th of July candles until July 4th because this
Wait,
is America, damn it.
Dave Coulier is Canadian?
I thought so.
Oh,
Come on,
I
his
didn't
last
know
name's
that.
Coulier.
That makes sense. Because he
I'm pretty
dated he
sure.
dated Alanis Morissette.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's Canadian. I'm like
That
90% sure he's Canadian.
that adds up. Speaking of Haley, I told her it absolutely tickled her that in the Kevin Smith universe that Alanis Morissette is God, which made her very happy.
Yes, that is true. Although technically speaking, it's not Alanis Morissette. It just looks like Alanis
It
Morissette.
just looks like Alanis Morissette because that's I was very funny because he figured God had to be Canadian, which I thought
I
was very
mean,
funny.
I mean, one thing I can be 100% sure of when it comes to religion is that God is certainly not American.
No, no, I don't. No, well,
Old Testament God, maybe.
perhaps Old Testament God.
New
My other
Testament
favorite quote
God
is
is certainly Canadian.
I did appreciate that he also thought that God was a woman. God is a woman. As a reference to American Dad, if you watch American Dad.
As you said that, I just remembered that joke. But anyway, we are here to discuss a little bit of politicking, but mainly my just appreciation for my friend Justin here. Um, Insofar as every time we have a political discussion, I always have fun with him. I always have a good time. I always get a little bit more enlightened because even though we are, depending on the topic, we can be very different politically, but
Yeah.
we've never even had a non-friendly political discussion.
No, we've never really had a disagree. I mean, to be fair, I do disagree with some of the stuff you say, but I am polite enough to not to be accusatory about it. Like, yeah, I perhaps disagree with your perspective on the Middle East, but I don't have much of a perspective on the Middle East because is a complicated and nuanced area of discourse. But yeah, we tend to agree socially, which makes things easier. Like even if like, but also it's nice to have an anchor point into the more right kind of space. Like I genuinely enjoy watching you and Eric on Average Intelligence podcast. It's a much softer, less aggressive, less agitating way to see how someone who leans more right thinks.
For
As
and
opposed to a Matt Walsh or like a Steven
uh,
Crowder who drive me
well,
fucking crazy.
well, the thing is, I consider myself a moderate that it really depends on the issue, though. I might lean a little right. I probably, actually, no, I know this for a fact because if you watch the Average Intelligence podcast, I took two political like quadrant tests, and
Yeah,
I'm basically like I'm basically libertarian, right? At the
yeah.
end of the day, I'm
I think
moderate libertarian, right?
we were sort of the same, but to be fair, political leaning in Canada is just different. Like you're technically speaking, right now, even though our government says liberal, we're technically being led conservatively. Like he's pretty much a conservative prime minister. But to be fair, not to get into a real, I learned this that like liberal doesn't necessarily mean left leaning. That because there's international parties that are liberal, but they're the that countries in Australia, for example, their Liberal Party is their right leaning party. That was
Correct.
their yeah.
I do
I learned that
always, and
recently.
there was a trend on sort of the right side of the political commentary. It's still around, but it was more common I'd say between like 2018 and 2020, where a lot of more moderate right leaning people would identify themselves as classical liberals, which is not incorrect, but it's basically because when the neocon wave hit, this is my understanding of it, the Democrats started becoming more identified as liberals, but in contrast to the like neoconservative movement. So
Yeah.
what was a very center position, but because the right went so far right in a short amount of time, that the center shifted.
That makes sense.
So
Because
at least in the states, liberal is considered left leaning. But if you look at actual like what liberalism is, it's not. I'm not going to say it's conservative, but
yeah,
it's not like
comparatively,
comparatively, yeah. But
yeah.
I'll put it to you this way: in the American spectrum of politics, you're just a dirty socialist.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a dirty socialist. I'm a absolute. It's really funny because it's I'm making a video where I'm like, yeah, man, you guys get this is bad for you. I love it. Take all the guns away. Give everyone free healthcare. I'm a dirty filth, but like that's okay. um one of our politicians, this is how I would put it, but that's not what people want. That's right, that's what I want, but that's not what other people want. Like our one of our conservative leaders, he was anti-gay marriage, and he went, I'm anti-gay marriage, but that's not what the people want. So that's what I'm like what I want ultimately doesn't matter because I don't have any power.
Well, I mean,
So
depending on what it is, you can have it in your, which is always kind of my,
I use my voting power and to
yeah.
vote
Well,
for
but
the things I want.
that was always my tongue-in-cheek argument for people that are like again like legislatively against gay marriage insofar as they want to pass a law to prevent gay marriage. Me personally, I just really don't care. But my whole thing is like, okay, if you don't like gay marriage, guess what? You don't have to marry a gay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I don't. I'm not, and I
But
never will never want to marry a man. So why should I have any say on whether another person should?
but
I
but I fall on the side of the baker with the whole gay marriage cake thing.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you shouldn't be forced. If you want to say no, you should be allowed to say no on anything.
Well,
On anything.
somewhat because I also, and this is where I'm still kind of trying to figure this out because
Also nuance.
I like my political nuance. So like for example, I think that a baker should not necessarily be compelled to be forced to bake to make a wedding cake for a wedding that goes against his or her religious convictions. I also don't understand, other than a money grab, why said gay couple would insist that this person who does not agree with their lifestyle or choices would insist that this person make the cake as opposed to one of the, I'm sure, several bakeries in San Francisco, or was it it was somewhere in California. I think it was San Francisco. But
To be fair, I don't know the story and its details, but I tend to agree with that. Clearly, these people don't like you. Why would you want to
it's
give them
not
any
even,
money?
but here's the thing, to the baker's point, if I remember the story correctly, which if I don't, correct me in the comments, but I believe he actually referred them to another bakery that
Yeah.
was cool with that. As far as I understand, it wasn't particularly hateful. He was just like, "Hey, look, you know, like I'm sorry, but this practice goes against my religious convictions. I cannot reconcile." Which, to be fair, if you are a Christian and you believe these things to be true, your eternal soul is not worth capitulating to a gay couple that wants a cake.
If they don't like you, if someone, I don't go where I'm not wanted.
That's kind of
That's
what I
just
said.
become,
So my dirty capitalist pig
that's
heart.
me.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, well, like then the bakery doesn't get your money.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah.
Like this is so weird. But conversely, if there were say a black couple that wanted a cake made at this bakery, and that guy was like, "Yeah, I don't really like black people." See, I'm not okay with that.
Oh,
That
yeah,
seems
yeah.
now that being said. I think if you really like just look at this in like a macro level, then I think the market sorts that out. But what it doesn't take care of is the just the hurt that that discrimination causes.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's I well I've experienced it, but not the same way. So it feels pretty shitty to go somewhere and be told that you're not welcome because of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's
I mean, I've been put in that situation a number of times. And yeah, so I've been put in discriminatory situations where I don't get to call it that because of this. But it's that when I go to my friends and I'm like, this is that, right? And they go, "Yep." And I'm like, "But I can't say that because of all of this." And they're like, "Nope." It happens all the time. It sucks. But it's the way it is. It-
I'm not equating my admittedly limited racism.
oh no, no, it's not
Like
the same.
I'm not. I'm just saying that
Not the same.
I have a slight basis for comparison, but I admit it's nowhere near. And I
Yeah.
actually like I'm not even going because that's not what we're talking about. So a window into sort of my political nuance is I just kind of think that as long as nobody's getting hurt,
Yeah.
I'm either cool with it or don't really care.
I'm sort of in that sort of place, yeah. I just like correcting people who say really absurd,
Well,
illogical things.
that's the other side of my well, not just my political brain, but what I do is the one thing that I am kind of a troll on is just bad arguments, even if you're on my side. I'm like,
I just
that's just a bad argument. And I believe, which is why I went to Jordan Peterson's defense, which not that he needed it, but I thought it'd be a fun video to do. Is I'm like, look, I'm not even saying that Jordan's necessarily right. But a lot of these arguments are misguided or just bad. And he's actually talking to some of these people, trying to get them to make their arguments better. And people aren't getting it
okay.
because everybody in politics too, to bring it back to the topic, because
Yeah.
everybody just cares about winning.
Yeah, well yeah, yeah. So here's my thing. I could have a conversation. He'd be a difficult guy for me to I can't he seems really smug, and that immediately puts me off of he gives me the he's a smug into intellectual vibe, which fundamentally makes me not really for me it's the not the message but the messenger in his case. And I also can't stand people who claim to be intellectuals siding with anti-intellectualism.
Not to cut you off, but I would say my question to you would be: have you watched any of his lectures in lieu of his
Yeah.
debates? Really?
So
Huh.
I've seen some of his early stuff, and that's where I said some of what he says it doesn't totally not. That's why when people go after him really hard, I'm like, I think he's
He
becoming
has.
raptured in
He
that right wing bullshit.
He has.
Um,
I'll admit that. I will admit that.
so
However, I, I'm not I'm not saying it's okay, but I can understand how it happened because frankly,
it's
when
easy to fall for. It
well,
is
it's not even falling for. I can see how somebody gets
or
angry.
fall into, I should say.
Yeah, fall into is a better. I like that better. But because when people show up to your speaking engagements and yell at you and call you a literal Nazi, I can see how that would get frustrating
Oh, I
relatively
mean,
quickly.
would get I'm sure would yeah get under your skin. My thing's like I would describe, and I don't know if you this is where we disagree. Maybe you'll agree with this sentiment. I believe the Trump administration and Trump to be anti-intellectuals. Like it's an entire
Yeah.
anti-intellectual,
Yes.
anti-school. Like I cannot stand people who discourage people from going to university. It's my number one thing I cannot stand because
Here's the frustrating part about that. So, and this has been an aspect of American culture at the very least since the late 80s, early 90s.
yeah, I could see
Because
that. Yeah.
you can even see it in like movies and TV. The concept of a moron with a briefcase. Now, the frustrating part is that those people do actually exist, and there are problems in our university system.
And most of them
But
are in the Trump administration. Sorry.
well, um, no, I think, but again, it goes back to the core issue is actually pretty easy to identify. It's that people on both sides of the political spectrum will use the argument from authority fallacy as long as it's somebody from their camp.
Like, I I can't stand. This is part of this is on topic. I cannot stand Charlie Kirk debating universities on university campuses. Like, there's this one clip I saw of him, and it's the whole reason why I can never respect him, where he's like, "What's the value in university?" And I'm like, "There's so much more," and this the student is stuttering to speak. There's lots of social value in going, like creating community, building groups of friends, and meeting and forming connections and networking and all that
Is
sort of inherent
is
value.
is university free in Canada?
No. It
Okay,
gets
okay.
very expensive.
I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not talking out of my ass here. And this is the frustrating part, and this is why I really like nuance, because if here's the thing, if somebody like Charlie Kirk and then somebody like, I don't know, somebody on the left who is like really pro college, right? But I
I
can't think of
don't.
I can't think of anybody, because I mean the left generally speaking is pretty
Dean
pro.
Parker. We'll no, I don't know
Well,
if he's pro school or not.
fuck that guy for, as you know, talking about nuance. But no, like, let's, I'm not even going to say Charlie Kirk. Let's say that you have somebody on the right that
Yeah.
has, because there are legitimate problems with college today. It is very expensive, and there are a lot of bullshit degrees that people get
Oh, for
that
sure.
and they're made, not well, some of them are made promises, but they're sold. Like, I say, my generation is probably, at least in the States, is probably the biggest victim of this, where from literally elementary school all the way up to high school graduation, we were told it was college prep. It's like,
Yeah.
and we
Oh,
were
same.
told in no uncertain terms that if you do not go to college, you will be a failure. I've
Absolutely same
actually
here.
had I've actually had people tell me it doesn't matter what you get a degree in, you just have to get a degree. And
Yeah.
statistically that is true.
Yep.
But statistics are funny insofar as they get rid of the nuance. They just present these numbers without any context, or,
Yeah.
and a lot of people look at, when you look at the average, you don't focus on the polls.
Oh, for sure. For
Right.
sure. I like. Okay. My see, this is where me being a filthy socialist comes in. I think the first year of university should be free, should be state sponsored, state paid for, government paid for within your taxes, and then if you want to go beyond that first year, then you pay. Then that way you can, because I went to university for 2 years, and I gained a lot from it. This, me, you, Final Frontier, Spur of the Moment, doesn't happen without those 2 years of university.
That's true.
Um, and I didn't, and that's not from any academic schools. That's purely from, you're like, why are you so good at this? At improv. I took I joke about it, but I took 2 years of improv. And the most valuable skill that I learned was not to hold on to any one idea with any fierce, that you need to let it go and give it to the collective union of the group, and they will tell you whether or not it's a good idea. And if it is a good idea, they will help you build upon it.
Yeah.
The concept of yes and I think it is an imperative skill that every person on this planet should learn, because
Sup,
there's too
Sosa?
many times.
I was just saying hi to Sosa. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, sup, Sosa. Yeah, sorry. There's been a lot of times where I've met people who are too insistent on holding on to their idea. Like, this is my idea, and I want credit for it, and I want everyone to know it's my idea, and it makes for bad debate.
Yes, and well, and then there's the whole motive. There's the often the motivation behind political and social
It's to
ideology is,
win.
well, or there's ulterior motives, usually money. But because
Typically money.
I've found that with a lot of social causes, is like, yeah, you say you're doing this for a certain group of people, but you're also making a
Astroturfing
massive,
exists.
you're making a massive shit ton of money too. So that helps.
Yeah, no, I watched a video on astroturfing. So yeah, no, that is very much a thing. Fake causes and fake outrages, all the norm. And yeah, in the case of why can't we agree or disagree? Yeah, it's politics has become a game. It's become a team sport. It's become either you're supporting your team or you're supporting the other team. And us guys, I'm gonna lump you into this, who don't really support any team with any
I
real
don't.
conviction.
I don't,
I
because and I warned our audience that this was going to happen. Um, again, I'm going to explain this because if you see it at face value, it looks like I move with the wind. My political beliefs don't actually shift that often. The problem is that say when the Democrats are running the show, I
Yeah.
tend to have a lot more it looks like I have a lot more right-leaning perspectives. That's just because that's where the conflict is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that Trump is and the Republicans are in control, I sound a lot more left leaning on certain things now, but that's because that's where the conflict is. My
I'm
actual,
similar.
yeah, but my actual convictions don't change that often. I will change my view when given new information or being given a really compelling argument. Like I always like to tell this story because I was not to controversial topics, by the way, not to get on the subject of abortion, but it's just a really, really good idea. And I still haven't quite figured this one out. That's why generally when it comes to abortion, it's like I'll say that like I'm politically pro-choice and personally like anti-abortion, but that's just for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a non-legislative pro-lifer, but I'm a little bit more legislatively pro-life than I was because I used to be pretty full pro-choice, and then I actually heard Ben Shapiro make an argument against abortion, citing the Constitution, and I went, well, fuck.
I when
Because
it
I
comes
can't beat
to
that. I can't beat that argument.
I mean, I it's a thing I don't argue for or against because when it comes to stuff like that, I don't have a uterus and I
Well,
will never give.
and yeah,
So I just it's a remove myself from that argument so as not to upset anybody, which is
and
filthy
that's valid.
centerist thing to do.
We are filthy moderates, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
Fence
absolutely.
fence sitters we're often called. But the point I always
Yeah.
make about abortion and why I don't really like to talk about it because to me, until we answer one fundamental question, the problem cannot be solved. And that fundamental question is we need a consensus on what constitutes the beginning of a life. Once we
Yeah.
have that, then we can. But you have no foundation to stand on that is universally accepted. Like obviously you have a foundation to stand on because you have your core beliefs, and this is often the problem with political discourse that goes sideways. Is
And legal, trying to define it legally as well.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like you need a common foundation
Yeah.
first, and then you can debate how you want to build the house. But
Absolutely.
until you've got the foundation, it's pointless because the house is just going to blow over. Like
Well, and
you're
it,
yeah.
well, and it also the foundation of why you believe this also arguably matters. Like I like for a person who is religious, I'm gonna say the non-awful version of this. Um, your reasoning for why you don't want this is just different than mine. Why I'm like, yeah, to me that's just a clump of cells, right? And I guess that kind of plays into what you said, where it's like, yeah, it depends on where you're, and we all can't universally agree on where that definition is, so you can't define it legally.
Well, and this is just something I don't know why I'm this way. I'm fucked in the head, but I learned I'd always kind of had this method of thinking, but I learned in college the difference between like rationalist thinking and empirical thinking. And
Yeah,
I've always been a rationalist, but then I was given a name for it because I'm like, okay, obviously empirical evidence cannot tell us whether to use that clump of cells example. Empiricism has yet to be able to determine definitively insofar as everyone can agree that that clump of cells is alive or not. Because for some people it is, for some people it isn't, for some people it's not yet, but it will be.
yeah.
Um,
Like
so,
biological technicalities, it is technically alive.
well, right, but that's where okay. So rationalist thinking is fun because you can come up with the craziest most out of this world thought experiments and still come to a logical conclusion. So, one thing I might postulate if I were having a civilized discussion with someone and we're just trying to expand our understanding because neither one of us is going to win that, but I would say, okay, this is rhetorical, so just I'm not attacking. I'm using you as an example. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you're wrong. So, but like you said, that clump of cells is not alive. Did I get that right?
Well, I said by all biological technicalities, it is technically alive. is
Okay,
what I said.
do me a favor and say it's not, just so I can get this
But for
example.
the sake of this argument, it is absolutely not alive.
Okay, so table that the single cell, right?
Yeah,
So, but let's say that there's a species of bacteria, and this bacteria is very valuable because what it does is it eats radioactive waste,
yeah.
and there's only one. There's only one left. Now it will divide and it will propagate and become a wider species, but right now there's only one.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Does this single celled thing have moral worth?
Well, I mean,
It
I don't
depends
know if
on
it
your
has.
perspective. It depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I would say I don't know. I don't know if it has moral worth, but like I can be kind of cold at times, so I would say it has other worth.
There you go.
Yeah,
It has worth of
yeah,
utility.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Fair enough. Fair
but
enough.
another to tie it back to the top. So you're like, okay. How come I can be so reasonable? And in the 30 minutes I said the reason why part of the reason why I can be so reasonable is I'm 35 years old and I've made a lot of mistakes and I've learned a lot of lessons.
And how?
And and the number one lesson is don't say your unpalatable opinion until you're 100% sure that the person. So I have without getting I have conservative opinions about homelessness. I tend to be the
Really? Okay,
I'm the
we're gonna get you canceled. What are they?
get a job. Get in the
Okay,
shower,
fair.
get clean, and get a job. I don't. It doesn't matter if it's doesn't. I work at. I know I don't like saying this on the internet. I work at a McDonald's, and I barely scrape by, and I live in an apartment building, I'm not a nuisance.
Listen,
Sometimes
and
they
this
can
is
be a
yeah.
nuisance.
Well, and this
I have
is
empathy. I have empathy,
yeah.
but sometimes they can be a nuisance.
Well, I think that there is this because again, unfortunately, with something like homelessness, it
It
is
makes you
kind of
sound
on a
like a monster.
well, no, because here's the thing, like homelessness does sort of have to be handled on a case by case basis, but you can see trends.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, when it comes to homelessness, the main sort of groups are people that are temporarily down on their luck and just need a leg up,
don't have issues
or
with those guys.
or people that have put themselves in that situation through various drug or
Okay,
criminal.
I've got a lot of really bad, but okay, here's a recent homeless person story, and it's like, okay, so there's a lady, and she's not well, just
Mhm.
mentally, and she's like hunched over, and she's got you're like your size dog, a big dog, like a big dog that's as tall as she is, and it's a nice dog. It's reasonably nice, and it's coming up to me, and it's like being friendly, whatever. But she's not. Like at one point, I worked beside a gas station, and she was like cleaning. She's pretending she worked there, and she's yelling at her what appeared to be boyfriend, being like. Being like you're an embarrassment to this company, and you're where you should be ashamed of the work you put in. Like just
I
and
shouldn't
so
laugh.
she was hanging out in a tent beside where we put our cardboard, and my staff walked over there, one of my crew members walked over there to take out cardboard, and she threatened him with the dog. It was like the dog has torn someone's arm off. And he came back and he was like, I don't feel comfortable going over there. And it's like around the corner, so you can't see it from my restaurant. And
Mhm.
like that, yeah, I have an issue with that. Like that's not cool. Like that, and that issue, she's being kind of a nuisance. So yeah, I have unpalatable opinions about
Well, but
people like that.
that I would say is completely independent from the homelessness because even if this person weren't homeless, that kind of behavior is not okay. It's
No,
irrelevant of the living situation. But like, here's an example, and this is very unpalatable. There is a homeless gentleman that I help out from time to time. Um, and long story short, I got him a bunch of phone numbers for resources, right? One of
yeah,
which, and this is important, one of which was a free phone.
right.
And for 3 weeks, I'm just kind of like checking. I'm like, hey man, how's all that going? Because like, and I called them first, and I said, you got to call this number, and this is who you need to talk to. Blah blah blah. Like I did legwork for this guy, knowing that he did not have a phone and his phone time will be limited, which is why I did it. I said, and his first thing he said was like, I don't have no phone. I'm like, I know, that's why I got this number. So you got to call them. They're just going to ask for your information and address to send the phone, and they will send you a phone.
Mm.
It's like maybe a 5 to 10 minute phone call. He's like,
Yeah.
why? He's like, why I ain't got no phone? I'm like, brother, like,
Yeah.
go to the library and ask to use their phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, go somewhere. Like, I get it. Like, and he's got a daughter who doesn't live in the immediate area, but he does see her. I'm like, next time you see your daughter, ask her to use her phone for like 5 minutes, and then
Yeah.
you can get your phone for 3 weeks. Same thing. You call him yet? No, I don't got no phone. And I'm like,
Oh, that
brother,
sounds frustrating.
like, help me help you.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta
And to
take the
be
first step.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, a lot of these things are things that just skills that people don't have, which admittedly I take for granted. I
Yeah.
will admit that the ability to make a phone call and inquire about not specifically government benefits, but the ability to call a phone and inquire about things is something that I've done multiple times. So that sounds like it's nothing, but for somebody who's never done it, like classic example, I recently, like within the last week, I had to replace some PVC piping
Yeah.
in my house. It is a very simple and easy job, but I had never done it before. So my paranoia of screwing it up made the job much more difficult than it was. Now, after I'd done it and read the directions 6 times about how to apply the adhesive and made sure, like I did a dry test run twice to make sure that nothing was going to like come apart with a little bit of, because obviously you can pull it apart if it's not glued, but like
Yeah.
I was making sure everything. Once I did it, I would just went, huh, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And now I can do it. But the first time it was really nerve wracking because I'm like,
Oh yeah.
oh, I'm going to screw this up. So I get it. If you don't have those skills, it can be more difficult. But I had to fix the pipe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I couldn't afford to pay a plumber. And
Times.
now I'm really glad I didn't pay a plumber because it would have been a waste of money. Because that plumber
Fair
would have
enough.
made like $300 for something that took 10 minutes,
Yeah.
10 to 15 minutes.
And I feel I should clarify when it comes to my issues with homeless people. That's because I've been hassled and just and there's been a lot of times where like I've cleaned up messes that unpleasant messes they've left behind. I'm like just like yeah, occasionally you run aground of like the opinion that they're kind of a nuisance. That's my unpalatable opinion.
Well,
Um,
well, if you would like some more unpalatable opinions from my Canadian friend right here, you should check out his podcast, the
hey,
Spur of the Moment podcast. Here is a sneak peek with a sick baseline.
So today's episode is sponsored by
I don't think I've ever
the
said
Spur of the
anything.
Moment podcast, everybody. Come join us every Saturday, and we're going to do this. We're going to sit here. We're going to talk about the news. Time to talk about the Minecraft.
Okay.
It looks
So,
bad. So we're going to talk about movies. That new Joker movie is apparently terrible, and I want to see it so badly because I hear it's awful. And we're going to make some jokes. We're going to have some laughs.
There's a lot of funny jokes in there. There's a lot of weird jokes in there. The Channing Tatum one will always make me laugh, especially when you hear the behind the scenes stuff. Like when you hear the behind the scenes story of how they just phoned them up.
We're occasionally going to have other people along for the ride.
A really fun fact, though, is I learned last year that that Coraline was Leica and not Disney.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I can see why you would make that
Yeah.
mistake. Yeah. Because it does seem like it's a different. And to be fair,
That would be a horrifying, terrible Disney movie.
it would be because yeah. And we're just gonna have a generally good time. George, do you have anything else you want to say about our podcast? Make people watch it.
We watch movies. Sometimes we watch shows, but we always have fun.
Here
On the
man,
spur, on the
a spur.
3, 2, 1. On the spur of the podcast moment.
Yeah, we nailed it. Nailed
Spur
it.
of the
That's
moment
fun.
podcast.
Yeah. It's Spur of the Moment podcast every Saturday. We nailed it.
You can expect awesome content like that.
We cut flawless promos every single week.
I think he
Well,
actually used the phrase I'm ruling," which was like,
well, we do like to dance. We're
that
like
we do.
the footloose town.
No, the Footloose Sound doesn't like to dance.
Dance. There's going to be a problem for a minute. You've seen Third Rock from the Sun, right?
Ish. I grew up with
Okay,
it, so
okay.
I've seen it here and
There's
there.
there's an episode where Tommy joins a band and
Of
they're
course.
practicing in the garage and Dick comes in there and gives a version of like the anti-dance sermon from Footloose because in the original Footloose, John Lithgow plays the dad,
That's
the
funny.
that's and it's hilarious. And then Tommy gives kind of like he's like, oh, so because you have a problem with your sexuality, you're going to stymie our ability, our creative, something to that effect. And then Dick just pauses and goes, yes.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen the original Footloose. I've only ever seen the remake, and the funny thing about the remake is how midway through that movie he loses his Boston accent randomly.
Well, kind of like how Scarlet Witch loses her Sokovian accent over the course of three movies. But
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. I digress. You said during the break something because my goal has now shifted to just get you canceled.
Get me
Um,
canceled?
yeah.
Oh man, that's already happened multiple
This is
times.
true. You're like me in the fact that you're not afraid of being canceled. I never have been
Oh,
because I'm just
that's
like, hey,
well, okay, here's what I would say. There is stuff I have on the internet that probably would get me canceled that I'm
I'm
not
posting
particularly
mine.
proud of.
I'm posting mine right now, and all I have to say is it was 2007. Comedy was different because
That was it, yeah.
I saw some of the stuff that I did on Weekly Wrestling Wrap Up, and I'm like, it's not awful, but some
It
of it
was
was just like, oh, I don't know that I'd make that joke today.
No, I definitely will. You have to now I make a joke about the joke, about how the joke is bad. Because yeah, no, I made a lot. To be fair, yeah, I was 18. It was like 2012, 2010. The humor was different back then.
It was
You
way
could get away
different,
with making more crass jokes, and they were some crass jokes. And
very much
also like
so.
me and Jordan's dynamic used to be I would and you're gonna laugh at this. I would say fucked up shit, and Jordan would be like, Justin, you can't say that. That was our whole bit for
But
like the
see,
longest time.
that used to be a bit. Like that was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
much a bit. But you had said something. You had said that you had some
Oh, an
unpalatable. Yes.
unpalatable opinion about immigration. We sort of it would skew more right leaning. It's just okay. For the longest time, we there was corporations in Canada got a subsidy for immigration foreign workers, and so they would just bring in foreign workers by the boatload and replace all of the Canadian workers with foreign workers because it was cheaper. They could schedule them for less, and they got a tax credit for it. And so our immigration system was hugely overburdened, coupled with the fact that there's a I don't know if you guys have a similar thing with your schools, but there's this whole scam where they have recruiters in Canada or in India, and they promise them cheap, easy, skippable immigration status where you can just skip right to full citizen, and you come to Canada and you go to like a bullshit. They're like trade colleges. There's one literally in my parking lot at work where it's not a real college, but it has like a college accreditation, and you get a kind of sort of pseudo fake degree, and they won't hire you. They like so you've got all these immigrants who have these degrees that are effectively meaningless. Um and yeah,
Oh,
and they I look, this is I don't want to be conspiracy minded, but within my circle, rules involving that they reduced the amount of hours that the people who were there under the international students could make, and all of a sudden they started working less at work. Like they started being this, yeah. So I'm not saying that's connect, but yeah. So I have an issue with taking advantage of people and misleading them. So the system
see,
is
yeah,
built to be taken advantage of.
that's I wouldn't say that's an unpalatable opinion at all. I'd say that's calling out a very, very bad and ill thought government
Yeah.
program that for the life of me, I can't like unless Canada was just really hurting for settlers.
I don't there was a sort of a reasoning.
Which
I don't remember
which
what the reasoning was
given
for it.
which given your real estate issue and pretty much everywhere I'm aware of in Canada, I'm sure there are some areas of Alberta that are like,
Yeah. Wow.
but
No, so
that seems like a poorly thought out plan.
the area I live in is a high Indian like densely populated with Indians. And so when you're working with them there's cultural differences where like they tend to be sort of isolationist where they tend to stick within their own groups um and we just so in that regard like sometimes you have but yeah for me on a case by case basis like a dear friend of mine he was the co-director on uh on the movie I made that you will probably never see um he passed away and I was heartbroken. He was incredibly encouraging. And the reason I started doing TikTok was because of him, because I
Hmm.
started watching movies because every time we would get together, he would add movies to a list. And so I was starting to plug away through the list, and the next time I never got to see him, but the next time I got to see him, I was gonna tell him. So that's the only reason why I've seen like The Godfather or there's a bunch of movies I watched specifically. It's the whole I did a whole series where I watched the AFI's Top 100. It's why I did that. So I could go to him and be like, check out this really fucking old movie I watched. And he was Indian. He was a very cool dude. So that checks me and prevents me from feeling like I'm overly prejudiced.
Well, no, and that's again, this is an unpalatable. It's not an opinion. It's again, it's. I'm not going to say it's not a universal fact, but it's trend that you can see. That's just pretty typical of immigrant groups. They do tend to stay not necessarily like totally insular, but they do. You sometimes it's language though,
Yeah.
like
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
language, and then it can be
It's
culture too. But like this is true for even like there's a very very large Polish population in
yes.
Chicago, and
Absolutely.
they even in workplaces they tend to not
It's
that
not
they
meant to
won't,
be
yeah, not that they won't.
condemnation.
No, and I
Like,
mean it makes sense because like if I were to move to another country and I got in with a group of Americans, I would probably be chummy with them just because we've got common,
yeah. Like
you
I have
know.
a friend who's Ukrainian and her mom despite living here, she largely hangs out with other Ukrainians, so she
Yeah,
mostly just speaks Russian.
that's
And
not
so
a, yeah,
that's
it's not
not
a
a dig.
bad thing. It's
No.
just a thing. It's a thing that
Yeah.
happens. Well, it's,
Yeah.
and again, it's kind of like too, even if you're just on a trip to another country and you run into somebody from your country that, I mean, you kind of have an instant. I made this joke the first time I went to Mexico and I didn't speak any Spanish. Is your barometer for good TV goes way down and it becomes, is it in English or
Yeah.
can you turn it to English? Using the sat button as an American was very surreal.
That's funny.
But I mean, yeah, like your bar for TV goes way down,
Yeah.
so your bar for company goes down as well. You
Yeah.
know, is
Exactly. So
can I talk to you?
it's not that I don't get it. Like, yeah, no, and oftentimes it's like they're all Indian women and me, So I'm like, I get it. I
But I
get it. I
but
get it.
I do think sometimes that does hinder certain people in immigrant groups because it keeps them a little too insular.
Yeah. Oh, for
Like
sure.
they
Oh,
but
yeah.
that being said though, racism does exist. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
That's
cutting it
dismantling.
up.
Yeah.
I'm not cutting it up. I'm just saying that's an interesting phenomenon that makes sense, but it
That's
barring
a
any like linguistic issues, it does. I'm a firm believer that like cultural osmosis is a good thing.
Oh, I am too, very much so. Yeah, okay, okay. People want to like to pretend that. See, I like coming on and talking to you because I get to dispel Canadian myth, and there's a lot of people who like to present Canada as being this post-racist racial utopia, and
Not
that
true.
racism doesn't exist in Canada. Do you know how many people pull up to my drive-through window and go, "Thank God you're white"? Like,
Yeah,
or
there's yeah, that's
you speak
I've heard.
English.
Well, even Toast, because Toast is a little bit more brown, even though his family's from Portugal,
Yeah.
and but he presents more Hispanic looking, right?
Yeah.
Even he has said like He's like, hey, listen, I'm a born and bred Toronto baby, but I speak Portuguese. My family speaks Portuguese, like,
Yeah.
and I look like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've heard firsthand accounts from various areas of Canada. So yeah, as much grief as the United, this is a hot take. As much grief as the United States gets for being racist, I think that we are probably one of, if not the least racist country on planet Earth.
Your racism. I would say every country has its own cultural blind spots. Ours is typically with the natives. That tends to be where our blind spot tends
To
to
be
be.
fair, that's probably our blind spot too.
Yeah,
Not gonna
yeah.
lie, that's
But
good. Yeah.
fundamentally, yeah, racism presents differently across the world. Is
And
how I
see,
would say it.
that's a great example of a nuanced conversation changing perspective because I just became guilty of it. I am guilty
Yeah,
because I always say I made that claim and I wasn't. I still think that claim is true, certainly for immigrants coming from outside. But yeah, there is that problem of the Native Americans
I
that
do think that North America generally is way more comfortable talking. Because the thing that blew my mind, that made me change my perspective on the world, is you want to ask where my perspective on the world comes from. It comes from movies and television. So like, there's an episode of Doctor Who where where they go back to the woman doctor. The woman doctor took her companions to the most unpleasant places, but she took them to the partition of Pakistan.
uh-huh.
Um, that was one of the episodes, and that episode involves brown people being racist to each other, and like me being a privileged white guy went, "Oh yeah, I suppose like yeah, negative racial prejudices are going to be different in different parts of the world." It made me feel really ignorant, but yeah, it definitely changed my. Or Jordan was talking about he was watching I think it was Ip Man. And he was like, it kind of went, oh yeah, right. Chinese people are, or Japanese people are racist towards Chinese people, and it got kind of opened his mind to like, oh yeah, racism takes different forms across the globe,
Hell,
which
that's
it
Jow.
does.
That's like 90% of Jiao Summer's comedy act is Asian on Asian racism.
Is it? That's funny.
It
Yeah,
is quite funny. Now, I mean, when she does it, it's in good fun, but
yeah. When she does it, it's okay. She can do it. Yeah, I was watching. We talked about Steven Crowder. This video I watched about him showed his stand-up act and his bad Indian impression.
ooh,
Oh
that I have
boy.
not seen. Ooh.
I mean, you're not seeing him go, it's hardcore. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's
But
so
like
bad.
it's funny because it's bad, not
It's funny because it's bad. Yeah, it's embarrassing. Yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah. But like, yeah. You got, but to steer back to topic, guys like that prevent conversations like this from happening because he thinks he's right all of the time, and then he says ridiculous things, and you can't be like, well, like if I said a ridiculous thing right now, you'd be like, well, Justin, probably not. I can't think of a really ridiculous thing to say.
I've always half jokingly said that like you know you have good friends if they call you out when you say something stupid because they're doing it out of love. They're telling you to not say that before you say it in public.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, in my 20s, I was really overconfident. It's just how I would put it.
Weren't we all?
Like, okay, there was a girl. Okay, the worst thing I ever said, well, not the worst thing, but one of the worst things I ever said to somebody
The
who
worst
was
thing you'll admit to.
deeply, the worst thing I'll admit to, she was deeply religious. And I was going through I'm an asshole atheist phase. And to be fair, she pulled it out of me. Um, I tried to be like, I don't think you want to hear this, and she insisted. And I said to her that I thought that God was inherently immoral, and she got so offended, and I proceeded to justify why I thought that. And this was a coworker, and then like after years later, I've had years later in retrospect, I'm like, that was not an appropriate work conversation. I shouldn't have tried. And so like opinions like that, I would never just were trying to get me canceled. I would never bring that up organically. Like you learn to read a room.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and because like it's it's very worthwhile when you've got a friendship where you know you can talk about difficult and not necessarily uncomfortable, but you can say things that if somebody didn't know your intent was good, could be construed as trying to be offensive or like trying to like gut punch.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But like
Like
because I've had
different time.
wonderful, yeah, because I've had wonderful religious conversations with people where we're debating pretty heavy stuff, but we also know that we're not trying to like destroy the other's faith or lack thereof. It's like, hey, I'm kind of curious about your perspective on this, and I'm wondering if there's something I'm missing.
I just when it comes to religion, I'm just there's the cliche of the guy with the glasses who is an asshole atheist, the amazing atheist. I don't know if you remember him or are familiar with his
I do
works.
remember.
I just strived to not be him. Like I just could not stand being like Richard Dawkins, like that,
Fun.
that.
I was just gonna bring him up, dude. I swear, I
Dude,
was just gonna
he's
bring him up.
so funny. Like he's got some like just objectively funny clips. But well, this Jordan. I'm gonna throw Jordan under the bus a little bit. He would say, "I used to believe in God, but then again, I used to believe in the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus." That was his line for the longest time. Um, I think that's an arrogant thing to say. And it's cruel to a person
Well,
who,
maybe
in my
not.
opinion, I would never say that to a religious person because it feels mean-spirited, I guess is
Well,
how I
but
would put it.
here would be my defense of that statement. Because first of all, I mean, it's objectively cleverly funny. Like
That's what I always say.
whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. The statement is funny. But my thing would be, if someone is religious, then not but your
Yeah,
opinion of said religiosity has as much value as my dog's religiosity. Like it's
pretty
not,
much.
you know. Now, to be fair, believers of all faiths do let themselves get dragged into these arguments when their response should always be, "Hey, I don't share that view."
Yeah, if we get to the end of it and you're wrong, you're gonna have a much better time than I am. So,
Well, yeah,
well,
Pascal already laid that one out. Oh my
I
God. Oh my God. I put a clip up because it organically came up because Eric was describing what was essentially Pascal's wager. And I'm like, oh, there's actually a philosophical principle of that. And I explained it. And then I'm like, that's a good informative clip because some people may not know that there's already a name for this. I threw it out there and the number, like, oh my gosh, the comments. Oh my God, the comments
always the
about telling
comments.
me how I'm an idiot because I'm like, it's only talking about the Christian God and it's incomplete. I'm like, first of all, never said it was complete. And you didn't watch the video because I pointed out that problem with it. I said, but Pascal is still right because if you're just assuming, if your concern is a cost benefit analysis, he is not wrong.
Fair enough.
Especially when you consider the fact that, as far as I'm aware, Christianity is the only faith that has eternal suffering for lack of faithfulness. So, just on a balance of probabilities, a
Yeah.
risk analysis, if you will, because, like,
Him or I was gonna say in terms of like challenging. It popped into my head where you were Bill Maher is another example of like the arrogant, like I'm just gonna come down on you and I'm right, you're wrong, and you're stupid.
that's why I don't really like. I certainly don't like militant atheists, but atheism. I forget who said it. I know Jordan Peterson said something similar to it, but that's not where I heard it first. Is a lot of atheists are act more religious in their not defense, their I mean basically like
Dog
their
dogmatic
evangelism
about it?
of atheism is so ironic because they behave like a religious zealot when they're arguing that there is no God.
Well, I don't identify as an atheist. To be fair, I don't identify as anything other than
I don't,
human.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't
Um,
anymore. I don't identify as an
No,
atheist
that's true.
anymore.
I would have identified as agnostic for years, but for the longest time I would have identified as atheist, but more just like I just don't the story I always like to tell, this is my condescending religious story, which is that when I was a kid, I had a moment where I logicked myself out of believing in Santa Claus. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember it vividly. I can remember the moment it happening. And many years later, I had the same moment when it came to God, where I logicked myself out of believing, and I went, "It just, how does he get to all the houses in one night? It just didn't make any sense."
Well, you see,
Um,
Justin, he uses time dilation, which is
how does
which is a
how
co-
is he everywhere all at once? No.
well, because obviously Santa is operates
Oh no,
on
I
a
was I was talking
quantum
about
level.
God. No, I was kidding. No, no, I sort of logicked myself out of it, where I was like, and there was just certain, moral. I think it was like, who is it? What's his name? There's been a lot of really much smarter people who have articulated my thoughts on this better than me, but I forget his name. Oh, he narrated all the Harry Potter books. He's in V for Vendetta.
Oh,
Uh,
Hugo Weaving?
Not Hugo Weaving.
Who was
Steven
he in V for
something.
Vendetta? Oh, Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry. Yeah, his articulation of the ideas of atheism I liked a
I've
lot
heard,
better, because it
yeah,
was
I've
it
heard
was
him.
far nicer than, Richard Dawkins. He was like, I don't believe in leprechauns. Do you believe in leprechauns? No. Then why do you believe in God? He's just as stupid as leprechauns. I'm like, that's
But see, that's
rude.
starting that. So there's two things because I was going to bring up Richard Dawkins. So I bought, or I should say, I didn't buy it. It was actually a gift, but it was on my reading list. I got his book, The
Oh,
God
it's like,
Delusion,
oh, that's
and
funny.
and I started reading it. And first of all, it's one of the worst written books I've ever like.
Yeah, no, I've never liked
It's
Richard
not
Dawkins.
it's not good. But also, don't waste your time. It's 10 chapters, but every chapter says the exact same thing in a different way. And it says that people that believe in God are stupid. So I ended up just getting the audiobook because I knew that if I was going to criticize this book, I had to know what was in it. Otherwise, people would
Yeah,
be like, he would have been, "Well, did you even read it?"
yeah,
And
absolutely,
it's like,
yeah. I
yes,
mean,
Richard, I read your book. And the only thing that it convinced me of is that you're a dick.
right? Like, you could be right and still be a dick. Like, but to be fair, that was I mean, he's much older than me, so you would think he would have learned that lesson, but that was a lesson I had to learn. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, yeah, gamification of politics, memification of politics,
It's the same thing. Like to bring it
it's the
back full
same
circle,
shit.
it's the same thing because now we're in a which this is for those of you who haven't connected the dots here yet. That's why Trump got elected because or one of the main reasons why Trump got elected because there were so many years of the elites who just happened to because of the time we were in. Most of them were Democrats. There were Republicans that were doing it too, but the Democratic Party as a whole kind of viewed middle America as a bunch of dumb farmers.
I
And
mean, yeah, yeah, it's not unfair.
And Trump comes along and says, "You're not stupid. You think just like I do, even
I
though I'm a Wall Street elitist."
Yeah. Okay. The other thing that kind of happened, and to be fair, I made the mistake too. And this is where all my left leaning allies are gonna be fucking pissed at me for saying this. I am also very, very, very good about, I will take you leftist. I'm not a leftist. I will never be a leftist, because there's too much of, pay attention, you're saying the same shit he said. You said that on Average Intelligence. I liked it. But it's the truth. You're saying the same shit that they're saying. Like, but you don't want to stop them. You just want to be the ones who are in charge. And like,
Yeah,
you don't want to be productive. You just want to be in charge.
you
And there's
don't
a
you
lot
don't
of
want
that.
to solve the traffic jam. You just want to be the one directing traffic.
Like, I won't say her name, but there's a leftist um disabled TikToker who has like actively said she wants people to be disabled.
Now, why do you
And
want to?
like,
Now, not why you got to throw disabled out there? Why you got
like
to out her?
because just like, I think that's
It's part of her
messed up.
platform. I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you're making a statement, whatever.
Who? Oh
But
gosh, who said that? Somebody said
like,
something.
no, you don't want people to be disabled.
No, somebody said that sort of in jest, but it was proving a point where it was like, well, paraplegics only make up like, I don't remember what the number was, it was like 0.001% of the population. Should we paralyze people to make that more representative,
Yeah,
And it's like,
like,
well,
I'm
yeah.
I'm
And the problem I have with a lot of more leftist arguments is that taken to their extreme, which is not too far, it becomes farcical at best and dangerous at worst.
yeah. But yeah, that's where I'm, yeah, where I tend to be like, well, I'm not for people like being born in pain and being born. So I'm like, if we can eliminate children who are born in utter and undescribable agony, I
That's
am
that sounds like a
not
good
against
idea.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, right? That
that sounds like a pretty decent idea. But
right?
at the same time, you mentioned this in the version where my mic wasn't working, but you had sort of mentioned that the Trump administration and realistically kind of like the more Republican, the current incarnation of the Republican Party as a
Mhm.
whole is like anti-intellectual.
Yes, absolutely. I would describe the Trump administration as being anti-intellectual.
Just because you are right on calling the left out of being elitist does not mean you are right when you think all intellectuals and professionals and experts are stupid. Some are. There are
Smart. Oh yeah, for sure.
there are
For
idiots
sure.
with briefcases, but those people actually tend to not be intellectuals or um I don't want to say professionals, what's the word? Experts.
Yeah.
They tend to be people with knowledge on paper, which you can get from a university, but it becomes very crystal clear very quickly, generally speaking, when somebody knows what they're talking about versus when they don't. Like, for example, there are these videos going around on TikTok right now. I'm glad I was able to segue into this. Of they say he's a Chinese college professor, but he speaks English, so figure that out. Talking about how allegedly a year ago he had this whole lecture about how Trump was going to start World War III. First of all, I don't believe these videos are a year old. Secondly, he's wrong on a lot of points just politically. Like he's talking about the the argument that some Republicans are making about how Trump can stay in power forever by constantly running for vice president, regardless of the fact that he, having served 2 terms as president now,
He
cannot be
can't
the
do
vice.
that.
He can't be the vice president because in order to be the vice president, you have to be eligible to be president.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and this man is allegedly a college professor. So I'm not buying it, but the comments are all the same. It's like, oh, he's speaking facts, bro. Like, get ready for World War III. It's like,
Well, that's the
no,
that's the memification of World War III we talked about. Like
yeah, but
that's what that is.
let's think though.
But to
If you
Gen
go,
Zers who are so removed from the idea of war.
well, yes and no, but I mean, let's realistically look at this. The concept of World War III has been a thing since the 50s.
Yeah. But you wouldn't know it was World War III until it was over, is generally the idea, the
Well,
understanding.
I still maintain that the Cold War was essentially what world like if you would imagine what that war would have been like had it been a hot war instead of a cold war, that which is why World War III as a concept has been around since the 50s, because the Cold War was a bubbling up of what could have potentially, and technically speaking, like this is a bit of a stretch, but all those like things like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all those conflicts where it was communism versus capitalism, that kind of was that kind of was a prolonged,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I
proxy
saw a
Cold War.
video. I was gonna say I saw a video on the internet where someone was like, "Well, if you count the various proxy wars over the various decades, that's theoretically World War III." But
Yeah, but
like,
that that gets you because I think you can make the case. Now, I wouldn't say this at an academic level, but I think you can make the case that realistically, going all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars, all the way to the end of World War II, is essentially one giant conflict because they all
no.
cascade and affect the other. But that's just history.
Yeah,
Right?
you're not wrong.
That's like saying that's like me saying that, the American Revolution could be considered part of the 7 Years' War, which
Yeah,
is not that's not an accurate statement, but the fallout the continental fallout of the 7 Years' War in the colonies, the American colonies, did sort of directly lead to the American Revolution. Now, I think that was going to happen anyway. It was just justification. I think it was
yeah,
coming, because those Republican ideas, the same way it happened in France. Like that was a
yeah.
powder keg that was always going to explode. Just the fact that people started starving did not. It sped things up.
Did not help. Did not help.
But it
Um,
also, I coined a bit of a, at least I think I coined it. If it exists, forgive me, but um, I kind of coined, which I think is true. I think you can always look at this and find it somewhere. Is you know the Robespierre of it all, where anytime you've got like these radical social changes, the person who was the shittiest, like when you push things so far to an extreme, it eventually eats you too. Because like you've
Yeah.
got Robespierre, who's like, we should behead them all, and then eventually his head gets cut off because some people eventually were like, okay, this dude's going too fucking far.
Yeah.
Like, like they will eventually kill you too if you're pushing so radically. Like, because
Whether
eventually,
literally or figuratively in the court of public opinion, yeah.
well, eventually, like the phrase "eat the rich" is like, well, what are you going to eat when you run out of rich people?
Yeah.
It will always happens. Therefore, it's the Robespierre of it all. Like, eventually, you will get eaten too,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that's
Oh,
why political extremism is bad.
um, on average intelligence, there's two fact checks I wanted to mention. The
Hit me.
lizard I was talking about was it was a Tengu lizard.
Mm.
They got big puffy cheeks. They're like they got the disposition of a dog. Like Leanne had one like sit. My friend had one sit in my lap, and it just chilled in my lap like a little dog. It was cute. And we were thinking of Andrew Wilson was his name.
Ah, yes. You know what's funny is I saw a clip of him today, and I was like, oh yeah, that's his name.
Yeah,
Except,
he's an example of someone who doesn't know how to have a civil discussion
well,
without.
actually, funny you say that, Jordan, because it's kind of already happening. I assume you're talking about the Robespierre of it all.
Yeah, with him
Yeah.
having enough room to hang himself.
I I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, essentially, I would say that your argument is correct because it doesn't matter if it's left or right. If you're going too extreme, your cause will eventually eat you because eventually you run out of people. Like, okay, case in point, talking about Trump, and I said this at the beginning, like, hey, listen, I'm all for you know dealing with. I'm not even going to say deport necessarily because sometimes I think that would be appropriate. It's a case by case basis, but I'm all for taking care of people who are in the country illegally that are violent offenders.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen when they run out of violent? And they answered my question very quickly. They didn't even have to run out of violent offenders to answer who's next. The answer is fucking everyone because
Yeah.
I think fundamentally this
Everyone who
philosophy,
doesn't look like us.
yeah, because fundamentally I think this philosophy has very little to do with criminals and has everything to do with it. Fucking, I'm just going to say it has to do with Hispanic people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Bro, I
like
wouldn't just say Hispanic. I would say anyone with the color that's slightly two shades darker than us.
Latino.
Yeah, Latino.
Yeah.
I mean, also the Middle Eastern. There's some of the Middle Eastern people are getting the
Brown people.
brown people. Yeah, brown people.
Yeah,
They're getting the business as well.
the fact that the United States government ended temporary protected status for Afghanistan
Yeah, that's pretty.
is
The one that got me was, I mean, we talked about the mayor on Average Intelligence. Go check that out. But it went from being 8 years to 2 years. Matt Walsh was like, he's only been a citizen for 2 years. I was like, what happened to 7 years? It was 7 years 2 days ago. Like that's pretty brutal.
yeah. Well, the terms citizen and resident are thrown around liberally, ironically
Pretty,
by the Daily Wire.
pretty hot liberally. I see what you did there. Um,
Ah, you did the thing.
you did the thing. Um, what was I going with the Trump? The thing, yeah. So regards to your opinions, I am occasionally surprised. The one that surprised me the most was when you said that you thought that Trump was going to get impeached and removed. I don't even think that.
Oh, not yet.
Like,
It's coming. It's coming.
Frizzy, that
I don't know about
utterly
removed.
flabbergasts me.
Well, no, because here's the thing. They're not doing it yet because they need a
Oh.
majority in the Senate to do it.
Oh, I saw it. See, okay, you want to talk stupid leftists? There was a bunch of people who got really how come all the 126 Democrats voted against it? How come they all voted against it? We need to go after them and we need to do this and this, and I was like, oh my God, guys, they voted against it because it's not politically advantageous to do it now.
It
Come
won't
on,
work.
grow some perspective. It won't work. You just
And
be wasting taxpayer money to do nothing.
Well, and honestly, part of political moderation is pragmatism, which is where compromise comes from. I jokingly say that compromise is where both sides are unhappy, but they can live with it.
Yeah. So do you think? Okay, you said that you thought that they were going to get both the House and the Senate, which also surprised me.
I think
that
I think
surprised me.
I think that's going to happen.
But let's say they don't get the Senate. Do you think they could now swing? It's palatable. We keep using the word of the day is palatable, but like it just seems like the Republicans are at odds of like trying to get normal people who don't like Trump to get them on their side and versus being loyal to Trump. It just seems like those are the two. That's where the juncture point is.
It
Loyalty to Trump
depends.
and loyalty to not the people, but like rational people, I would say.
Well, I think there are people in the Republican Party that have always kind of been not necessarily like they call them never Trumpers. They're not necessarily anti-Trump as they are pro like the Constitution. And when Trump
Yeah.
or anyone violates said Constitution, they're kind of like, and I'm one of those people where it's like when Trump does something good, I can say, hey, good Trump. But when you violate the Constitution, I don't care who you are. I'm kind of like, listen, if you want to
Okay.
change it, if you want to change it, there's a way to do that. It's just difficult.
Yeah, no, fair. See, it's funny. I love being like, yeah, whenever I talk to you, I love being like, see, I'm not entirely, because you always characterize me as more left-leaning, and I always like to be like, no, I'm really, but because I guess it's because I just get yelled at by leftists so often on TikTok. But one of my one of my personal favorites was when I said Trump executive ordered plastic straws back, and I was like, you know what, I inherently fundamentally ideologically disagree with him, but I'll give him the straw thing. And I got I got an angry comment about how I was like the straw thing is the least of
Well,
I was like,
funny,
oh my
funny you
God,
should
well done.
funny you should mention plastic straws because that's actually a really good example of something that was not politically. They could have done it, but they made one critical mistake. They tried to get rid of plastic straws before they had a legitimate alternative that worked because this may sound petty, first world problem, but paper straws suck.
Oh, paper straws are awful. They are worse for the environment because of what it takes to make them. They don't work, and yeah, no, they're objectively terrible. They're worse than
Never,
plastic straws for
yeah,
the environment,
never mind the fact that you can make plastic out of hemp.
right?
Just throwing it out there, you know.
But hemp wouldn't. I mean, that goes into the decades long history with your country and marijuana.
Well, but that's something where honestly the left and the right could join forces on. It's like,
Absolutely.
listen, we may not agree about marijuana, even though Republicans are kind of coming around, especially the more libertarian minded. But it's like we can all agree that hemp and marijuana are not the same thing, and that this could solve a lot of problems simultaneously and be better for the consumer because it's cheaper because your crop yields are like you can harvest hemp like 3 to 4 times a year.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, there's a whole racial history about and its ties to the policing, racial problems with policing in America. Um, racial discrimination in America? No. Oh, where was I going with that? Oh yeah,
Yes.
my thing is both sides are equally unwilling. So long as you see the person who disagrees with you as evil,
Yes.
you're never gonna progress. So and both sides are equally guilty of this. Of the other another epiphany I had was just this weird refusal to like I said this on average until but criticize your leader and like yes the MAGA of it all, but the left is just as bad.
They are.
They were unwilling to like levy criticism against Joe
They
Biden,
they had a
against
literal weekend at Bernie's president and
yeah,
were
yeah,
unwilling until it became, and there are still some people that don't,
till it
but
became
like,
advantageous to do so.
well, it's not even advantageous. It that shift did not happen until he froze, his brain shut down on live television where like millions of people were watching, and you can no longer like there is nothing you can say that can convince someone that they didn't just see a man's brain shut down temporarily.
But my thing is not even just that happened, which it did, but it's like I have lost not that I had much respect for Jake Tapper, but like him coming out with a book being like we
Oh
knew the
yeah,
whole
that's
time, guys. Fuck
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm
This
just
this will
fuck
this will
you.
surprise some people. It's like Yeah, I think that was gross. And I
That
actually
was
feel
scummy.
in that particular instance, I do feel bad for Joe Biden. I do feel bad for Joe Biden. I think it was irresponsible for everyone involved because he obviously had at least early onset dementia. He
Well,
had health problems.
well, I mean, I have Trump also kind of sort of shows symptoms of that,
Not
based
to the
purely on
same
the
degree,
fact
but
that
yes, it's coming.
it's coming. That probably is what will happen to him. But and the reason why I can say that without armchair diagnosing is I had family who had dementia. So my mother, she worked with people with it. So she was like quite a while ago. She was like, yeah, he shows signs of it. It's not as far along as Joe Biden's was way worse. But I used to be real defensive of Joe Biden in the sense that like I would be like, clearly he's got same thing you say about Trump, where you're like he has handlers who are telling him what to do. What is Jordan saying? He has
A couple of the
handlers.
fuck paper straws.
The scene is at Wendy's where they have a yes, he's right. They
Yes, I
have like
did
a
see that.
wanting
To
to.
not to be that guy, but particularly when you're talking about sugary drinks, though, the straw is overall better for dental health.
Yeah, because it goes past your
Hmm.
past your yeah.
But what I'm
You're not
saying is,
wrong.
my point is, there are really smart people in the world who can solve this problem. People much smarter than me
Me or me.
who can solve these problems. But for some reason, we don't let them because we decide that plastic straws are the hill we're going to die on.
Right? It's weird. But Joe, yeah, I for Joe Biden, I always thought like you say for Trump, he had bad advisors around him who were giving him bad advice and that who convinced him that it was a sure thing to win against Trump. But like what I've heard is that that was all him, baby. Like he was dissuaded from running for re-election and he chose to. So like on the one hand, I feel bad for him, and but on the other hand,
I just
he
don't
kind of
believe
brought it
that.
on himself.
I mean, he did because at any point he could have been like, but my conspiracy theory is that they wanted Kamala to be president, but they didn't think she could win an election. And I think that's
Yeah,
demonstrably
man.
true.
Well, I mean, yeah, because considering they didn't, we talked about, yeah, considering they didn't primary her, but
That's
um,
true. Between the Wendy's cup and the paper straw, I would take the Wendy's cup. That's another thing. I'm glad you said that because that reminded me of a point that I did want to make, and is that we have this kind of weird idea politically, at least in the United States, but I'm assuming in Canada as well, where like a plan has to be perfect instead
yeah.
of being like, well, it's better than the shit we have now, and we can. It's not necessarily a bad thing to say, hey, we're going to improve on this, and then I'm
Well,
sure that in a few years we'll figure the rest out.
in my opinion, like this weird segregated, you're either right or you're left. It is so detrimental to society as a whole. To me, society, we're better when we're collaborative. When I go, hey, here's my idea, and you go, that's an all right idea. Here's how I can make that idea better,
Yeah,
and you go, and
exactly.
then it crosses back and forth. But we're not doing that because
No, because it's instantly a bad idea when it comes from that side.
from when it
We
comes from
just
that side, yeah.
we cannot abide this. But I'll tell you what is never a bad idea, and people of all political stripes, except for the super radicals on the left that hate America, is you should celebrate America's Independence Day with a red, white, blue, or red, white, and blue candle. And here is a word from our friends at Stevie Wicks to tell you just how you can do that.
So today's episode is sponsored by Spurr.
Happy 4th of July from Stevie Wicks. Celebrate Independence Day with our Americana candle collection featuring red, white, blue, and red, white, and blue layered candles. We wish everyone a safe and happy holiday.
Hot take.
Okay, so I do have to say this because we were talking sort of while you were getting a glimpse of those Americana candles, which second link in the description is you mentioned that we have a pretty flag. I'm just gonna say I do think the American flag is legitimately one of, if not the best looking flags in the world.
Yeah, I
Like
think it's
it's
a
up
pretty
there.
flag.
It's up
It's a
there.
nice looking flag. To me, I love Japan, but
It's
Japan's
kind
just a
of plain.
period.
It's kind of
Just a
plain.
period.
It's just a period stain.
Well, it's just a period, but you saw what you saw.
Oh, I thought you were making a super bad joke.
I mean, I'm not saying I wasn't making that joke.
That's true. Canada Day's the first, right?
It is the first. Canada Day
Yeah,
is on Tuesday.
yeah. You guys have a celebration before we come in and blow everything up.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, we always do yours like our Thanksgiving is in October. It's always just before you guys.
I do like
Uh,
Canada's flag. It is just I can. It is a little plain though.
it's a little plain. It's a little plain.
I get it though.
It's not
I do dig the maple leaf, but
like I
Mexico
think
has
some
a cool
are
flag too. Mexico does
Mexico
have a
does
cool
have
flag.
I do like Mexico's flag. I do enjoy Mexico's flag. They got a pretty good flag.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, in terms of disagreeing, yeah. And to be fair, to be like I feel like the right gets a lot of shit. But the left is just as guilty of this crap as the like hardlining. You can only support the one candidate. Um, you have to it's your side. Like like there's this guy who's from Alberta, and he made this video where he's like, "Hey, you can come, help me out with this, unless you're a liberal." And I was like, that's such a childish thing to say.
Yeah.
I do like the British flag, just the flag. I don't know,
I don't simply because I just on
America.
principle. Well, I just on principle have to stand against the British.
You have to. It's true. You're American. See, we still have to pledge allegiance to the king.
That's true. Ain't no
We
king.
don't have.
Ain't no king on my money,
I mean,
or
not
technically not
yet.
on your money either. But
Just wait till like 5 years from now when you have Trump dollars.
technically we do. They're not legal. Well, okay. So there is a thing. I don't know if they do this in Canada, but you can get novelty currency.
Yes,
Now, sometimes it is fake, but sometimes it's a real dollar where they just put like a
it's funny.
they put a sticker over George Washington for like a $1 bill or whoever may be on said bill. But
That's
it's
funny.
fun. It's fun. It's fun.
That's
So
funny. Trump.
I actually do have a Trump bill. It's a novelty color one though, so it's not legal tender, but
See, my dream is, and I don't mean this maliciously, I just because I feel like he's like your clown. I mean, I don't mean this. This is gonna sound disparagingly, but it's not because I think clowns are delightful. But as your clown president, I kind of want him to die on camera. Like I kind of want him to just have, oh God, I'm having a heart attack, and just die dramatically on camera. So that way, when they inevitably make a movie about this, it has a nice dramatic ending.
well, he almost did. Um,
Yeah,
that ooh, and you know what though? Honestly, it's for multiple reasons is a very good thing that he didn't because that would
Oh
have
no, it
been
is absolutely a good thing. As that's it's because you have to ride this line when you're an anti-Trump person because you don't want to get lumped into like, oh, I hate the phrase Trump derangement syndrome, but it
it
absolutely, yeah, in some
exists.
cases it does exist.
But
It doesn't exist to the degree that Trump says it does, but it
well,
does occasionally exist.
I would clarify that statement as saying it does, but at the same time it exists on the right. It's like I said this on Average Intelligence. There's like just like diabetes, there's two types of Trump derangement syndrome. There's left and right.
Yeah. But
Because
like
some
not
people
every
yeah.
critical thing you say, like some people would say that you have Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh,
Like
that's
it's
laughable. Which is
like
hilarious because I was defending him on the Iranian airstrikes just the other day.
right, but like
Yeah.
there's like
That's
anything
true.
critical of Trump, you have Trump derang like I would obviously get hacked with it, but um where was I going with that? Um yeah. No, I don't I have to oh yeah, that's why I have to be careful because I don't want to sound like but yeah, I just think it would be poetic if he had a massive
I can understand. And see, that is another thing. I do not immediately take offense to that because I know you don't mean it maliciously. And I also
no.
understand that that would give a nice bookend to a movie. It
the
would be a
the the
very, very
the
poetic.
artist in me wants this to be his entire presidency has been dramatic. No, that's what I was gonna say. Him getting shot. If he'd been that's what I was gonna say. As a person who is an anti-Trump guy, I absolutely like agree that would have been the worst thing ever.
Well, because then he
that would
would
have
have
been
it would have
so
been
bad.
it would have been bad because obviously nobody should be killed like that
Right.
just for politicking.
Just to be clear,
But
yeah.
for the people
Political
on the
violence is bad.
left, for the people, especially the ones that were dancing in the street, is like, you don't understand. Then he would have been a martyr
Yeah, exactly.
to a much more militant MAGA movement. And that, I'll be honest, I'm not calling for this, YouTube. I just want to be clear on that. That might be the only way you can get the MAGA movement to stay after Donald Trump leaves office, is if he
Yes.
is martyred for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, your best case scenario is he somehow manages to live to the end of his term and he dies an old man in a retirement home. That's your best case scenario when it comes to Trump. I maintain he's gonna have I think he's gonna have a massive coronary one day. Just because of he doesn't
Have you
eat well.
seen what he eats?
Yeah. He's gonna have a massive heart. Like
The
what he
only
eats and
the
he's in
only
the high
thing,
stress
yeah.
job of the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing, which is funny because I was actually giving Trump credit for this, because you will see this, even one term presidents age very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing was, in Trump's first term, he's like the only president that didn't age at all. But now
That's true.
in his second term, it's starting to show.
I was impressed. I was impressed because you saying the occasional slightly left leaning thing is not so. When Eric said that Donald Trump was looking a little tired, he doesn't quite have it. He's losing a step. I was like that was impressive. I was like that's to me that's like you guys are kind of like my canary in the coal mine. Where I'm like, if you guys are saying this, that means I'm not. It validates my opinions because he does seem tired. He seems like he seems like this is taking a lot out of him.
He does have an air of like just general, not frustration that he's not getting his way, but just the frustration is like, I have to work so hard just to get this little thing done.
There's been a couple of there's been a couple of senior moments on camera, but like angry senior moments where like that is an elderly man lashing out. My favorite senior moment was when he was talking about Baron and the computer, where it was like, and he could turn on the computer, and I was like, oh my God, he is an old man. Like there are times where my thing with Donald Trump is he makes people crazy, like he
He
makes people
does.
crazy.
He always
And
has,
just
though. Like people act like
yeah,
this is a new thing. He always has.
I think it's just because of where he's positioned. It's more noticeable.
Well, and to be fair, there is something to be said of, you are going to drive people crazy when you're just, Trump has an almost second to none ability to just double down.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's frustrating. It is, because just ask Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah,
Like
I
that goes
can't. She's
back
in Ireland.
decades. Oh, sorry. Ask Rosie O'Donnell, she'll tell you.
But the reason why I fundamentally believe this is now important more than I ever did in the first because in the first Trump presidency I was absolutely you voted for Trump, you're dead to me, or you support Trump, you're dead to me kind of person. Where I was like, how could you vote for the clown man? How could you do that? Um, and so I cut a lot of people out. And this time, I'm like, I understand better why you could vote for the clown man.
Well,
And
and then to be fair, as someone who did vote for Obama in 2008, um,
really,
yeah,
huh.
felt a little slighted after the hope and change didn't really come to fruition. Now, was that all Obama's fault? No. But, the
Some
hope
of it
and
was Mitch McConnell's fault.
some of it, yeah, but the fact remains is that the hope and change did not come. And then
True.
In Obama's second term, I mean, they just dialed up, not not to the same degree that happened under the Biden administration, which honestly surprised me because I predicted Biden to be, which I think history will show that he was a stand-in president, but I thought Biden would just be a placeholder for 4 years.
That's what he said. That's what
Yeah,
he
but
said.
that's not what he did. Um, but so in that same vein, there were a lot of people who were already angry about Obama just because Republican, tiny bit of racist,
A
and
little bit.
those of us that felt that, I think betrayal is too strong. We were let down by the Obama administration.
You're not the only. I mean, to be fair, he disenfranchised. I watched a really got a really good documentary about disenfranchised Obama voters. So I definitely I saw one guy he said that like you guys what a lot of black people in particular were like in this like haze of like almost like a drug like euphoria of being like everything's good now because the president is black and like I think
Oh,
that sort of did happen where
it did.
a lot of Democrats were like, and we cured racism, everybody.
Well, funnily enough, not funnily.
Arrogantly, I would say.
Well, but honestly, like race relations under Obama in 2013 in his second term, that's when it dialed up. That's when it got worse.
A little bit, yeah.
Now,
Yeah, his second term was kind of rough.
is that Obama's fault? I don't know. I think he helped. He didn't help.
I mean, he is so charismatic though.
He really is. And I will always give credit where credit's due. If you're looking for the most polished president of the modern era, look no further.
There's so many great. One of my favorite Obama memes was history will show that for that very brief window of time, there was a middle part of a sandwich where somebody could speak in complete sentences. I was like, yes, there was. Yeah, man, yeah. See,
I
that was
will say
really
this too. Like Obama could code switch like no other.
oh, yeah. There's a really funny clip where it's him. It's the do you ever watch Key and Peele?
I've
Yeah, you
seen
see
some
the
of their
meme?
stuff.
There's a video of him literally doing it.
Yeah.
It was the funniest thing. I was like, holy shit, he actually does it. That's amazing. I was like, oh my
Well,
God,
he
yeah.
certainly did it better than Hillary Clinton ever did.
Oh,
Because I'll give credit where credit's due. The dude was smoother about it because he wouldn't just like he'd go to Arkansas, right? And he wouldn't immediately go to, he'd start out the normal Obama, but then by the end of the speech, he'd get a little
throwing a little twang in there.
he'd get a little twang in there. He'd say something like, "I got my name from my father, but I got my accent from my mother." As opposed to Hillary Clinton, who would just go out there and be like, "How y'all doing tonight? Yeah."
Oh, come on, go to the polls. Ooh, that made me cringe.
Yeah, that was
I
bad. But then she'd
she
go to New
was
York and just be like full New York, you know.
she was the one where I was like, Obama gaslit me into thinking I was a Democrat until she was running, and I said I never believed in the lizard person conspiracy until I watched her speak, and I was like, she's a lizard person, like they are real, and she is one of them. She was a terrible public speaker, still is a terrible public speaker. Her speeches are
I
agonizing.
I pointed to this as an example because this happened.
To be fair, I also think Trump's speeches are agonizing. I need to show
But
up for the left for a little bit there.
they're entertaining in just a totally very unique way. I
I'll watch
always
him for
used to,
about
I always used to enjoy Obama's speeches because I will give credit where the dude is generally witty, or at least his speechwriter was. But
his speeches are
Obama
good.
was
Yeah,
pretty witty, like because he could go off the cuff occasionally. He was a pretty witty
he
guy.
his diction is so similar to Trump in the sense that he does the pause and then talk again and then do this, or he'd be like this and then he'd pause. You know that.
That's not just Obama, but that is a political. Which I actually gave Trump credit for this because Trump does not do this. At least not often, but Hillary Clinton is probably the worst offender of this, but so many of them do this, is when a politician is giving a speech, they will build up to the point that they're making, and then they will add inflection and put bigger gaps between their words, and then they'll speed up a little bit, but the gaps are still there, and then they make their point.
It's so true. It's the one that drives me crazy is Hakeem Jeffries, because Hakeem Jeffries is
Oh,
just doing an Obama impression,
he
and it
really
drives
is.
me crazy. He drives me crazy every time. He just talking like Obama. He even does the hand thing, and I'm like,
Well, but
what?
Obama, to be fair, Obama was just doing a subdued Martin Luther King Jr. impression.
Oh, that is
That
true.
well,
That is true.
that
Yeah, that's
cadence of
fair.
speech is a thing. Like it is a I borderline say it's a political strategy that works. It's very
Oh,
effective.
I mean, it's definitely to appeal to a segment of to make uncomfortable liberals feel comfortable. Is how I would put it.
Funnily enough, that's one of my criticisms of Hamilton.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna have to remain neutral on that because that I do definitely. There's some moments in that where I'm like, this feels like it's like black people co-signing on a really messy part of history. I know they're not, but it kind of gives it that vibe
Well,
when you're
it's
like,
there's a strange sense of irony for preview for the Hamilton trial, which will be July 2nd on the Part of Your Broadway Word podcast. Yes, I will be in costume. Um, Hamilton is Hamilton is a show that if the cast were, how should we say this, ethnically correct, it would have either been, in all things being equal, that if the casting had been ethnically accurate, historically accurate, then one of two things would have happened. Either nobody would have cared, or
it's
people
true.
would have been outright offended.
I think that's sort of part of the gimmick, though. It's like
It
this.
is, but that's just it. It's a gimmick. And here's the thing: you can do gimmick. The problem is when you're having black actors portraying people who were slave owners in a positive light and not bringing it up, but also bringing it up.
I do get what you're saying because that reminds me of, and this is tangentially connected, but we were on Average Intelligence. We briefly talked about Kevin Smith and Chasing Amy. There's a bit in Chasing Amy, which is written by Kevin Smith, and he's got a. I looked him up. The actor is gay, but the black friend.
Oh yeah,
Have you
he
seen
plays
Chasing Amy?
Hooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, he plays Hooper X.
Yeah. Yeah. He has a big long monologue about how much he hates lesbians. And
Yes.
like, um, I'm like, that feels kind of slightly icky because it's Kevin Smith saying the icky thing about lesbians filtered through a gay man as though it's his opinion. And so that's what that makes me think of, where it's like, yeah, it does. It feels like they're being like, because they found in America, the itchy parts are a little less itchy. That I kind I get what you're saying.
Well,
That's
I think my biggest issue though is they paint Hamilton as this abolitionist where his job at his father-in-law's for a time, one of his duties, one of the jobs that he had was buying and selling slaves for his father-in-law's company.
well, that
And
makes
it's
sense. Yeah,
kind of like, and it would be one thing if they just kind of ignored it in the context of the musical,
yeah.
but they outright on I think two or three occasions have Hamilton allude to the fact that he's right. And to be fair, Hamilton did have some abolitionist beliefs, but very much in the same way that like Jefferson in his writings believed that slavery was wrong and yet
He had a bunch of them.
owned slaves until the day he died. Some of
Yeah.
some of which he created biologically by
Yep.
himself. So I guess you
Oh,
could call him a proactive slave owner. But
the one that made me laugh, that kind of made me go, yeah, you're right. What that you said was how at the beginning they give away the ending immediately. That made me laugh because I was like, that is so. After I got off that podcast, I went, holy shit, he's right.
well,
Like,
and funnily enough, I will say this, and this might appease Haley a bit. Hamilton could have been a really good show, but there are just some things that just ruin it. And my biggest issues are probably the very beginning and the very end of that show.
I can see why you would say that.
There,
Yeah, I
well,
watched
actually, I'm
one
not
about
going to
Bill
give
Burr.
I'm not going to give this part away, but the play shouldn't be called Hamilton.
No, it's really more of a story about Bill Burr.
Wait, what song can you not listen to anymore?
It's still gonna destroy you.
And then there are just some interesting moments that like they create musical numbers around, and it's like, really? This is what we're okay.
I mean, my favorite moments in that music. I get to say all my opinions because I'm not getting as the impartial judge. My opinions will not be on display. But my favorite moments in that musical are anytime I start to feel lost, historically speaking, the play just stops and gives you a history lesson where it's like, and Hamilton did this, and I was like, wow,
That's
this is really useful.
funnily enough, that's one of the things. It's not that I disliked that they did that, but from a writing perspective, it seems like a crutch.
Oh, it's lazy. It's so lazy because yeah, it needs to convey a great long story in a very well, relatively short window of time. Quite
Right,
many years and decades of his life.
right. But I mean, I'm not going to. And then some of the other things I'm going to bring up is there are some startling, considering some of the characters that are in this production, there are some startling omissions of people that absolutely should have been in the play because they had a closer relationship to Alexander Hamilton than some of the other people.
Hey, Daveed Diggs can only play so many characters, okay? He can only do so many tight raps, okay? He can only rap so fast.
Well, to be fair, Jefferson should absolutely have been in that.
Yeah, I like Jefferson. Yeah, Alexander.
It's not a good song. It's not. It's not a good song. It doesn't count as a rhyme if you say the same words in a different verse. It doesn't count because the lyrics, Alexander Hamilton, my name is Alexander Hamilton, is not a fucking rhyme. It's lazy.
That's like that's oh you mean that's like in the song the Eminem song where he rhymes Sweden with Sweden.
Yeah.
How did you get to sweet baby? You're in Sweden. How did you get to Sweden? I'll never forget that. In Canada, we had a show called
I rode on a plane with Josh Whedon. See?
yeah, it's real easy. Um, but yeah, no, in Canada we had a show called Video on Trial, and they pointed that out, and I've never been able to unnotice it since. Did he just rhyme Sweden with Sweden? He did.
Also, just to kind of close and put this to circle around, this is the last thing I'll say about Hamilton. Boy, Lin-Manuel Miranda wants to be Eminem, but can't.
My thing is like he makes himself the lead. Okay, this is I got a number of criticisms. Hurricane is a terrible song.
It's awful.
It's awful. Why? He was gonna play Bill Burr. He was originally gonna be not Bill Burr, Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr. I
That's
was
a
going to say
completely different
Bill.
show. He was gonna be Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr has a bunch of ballads that require you to sing a falsetto. That there was no way Lin-Manuel Miranda. Have you seen? Okay, have you seen Jesus Christ Superstar?
A long time ago. I've seen it
Ha-
once.
Have you seen the clip of him of the oh he played Jesus in one of the in a production of it, and there's a clip of him singing the the big high note. Why can't I? If you haven't seen it, there's a really hilarious montage. I'll send it to you. It's bad. It's
Yes,
horrible.
Haley. Lin-Manuel Miranda did do a guest spot on How I Met Your Mother, where Marshall is on the bus trying to get to Barney's wedding,
That
and he does the rap with the exact same cadence that he always does.
yeah. Well, that's because he started off, and I think he still is part of it, but he's part of a rap improv group, and they all rap like that. That's where the rhythm comes from.
Because it's always the same pace and the same brace and so
it, it makes it easy to add rhymes to it, and yeah, it's that kind of rhythm it is.
yeah.
But
Anyway,
those are all my opinions on Hamilton.
that's him.
I look forward to
Now,
that on July
Haley,
2nd.
you will. I said this. I don't think you saw this because this was on the first live stream. This is the last thing I'll say about Hamilton. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's still not good. Or okay, I'm going to rephrase. It's. I think it's bad, but I will also admit, to bring it back to civility, I will also admit that it is really not my cup of tea, but it has some very big problems that I think people chose to ignore because they were told it was a cultural phenomenon. And if you spoke out against Hamilton, like I'm going to do, people will attack you.
To be fair, you got to put it back. You got to put it back. This was big in 2016. Obama was about to stop being president. We were about to have Donald Trump as president. So like the left was super into this. There's a clip of them singing One Last Time at the White House where Michelle Obama cries. Like this was a cultural phenomenon. I think
I
removed
get
from
that.
that, it allows you to be a bit more clinical.
But my whole thing is I don't understand how this show exploded. I don't get it. I don't understand. And now people act like In the Heights was this big thing, and it wasn't.
It really wasn't. No, I see. I don't care for In the Heights. I don't think In the Heights is very good.
It
That's
it
that's just
just
me.
it just wasn't. Much like Hamilton, it's revisionist history.
Yeah, but people do that all the time.
This is
Where
this is
they
true. This is true. This is
people
true.
trying to gaslight me into thinking that people thought that the or prequel trilogy. We're not getting into Star Wars, but that like that or like the Fantastic Four. People were trying to pretend that we thought those movies were good. Like no, we
No,
didn't.
no, they never. I
No,
refer to it as the Fantastic Four curse because they just can't make a good Fantastic
they
Four
just
movie. Now
can't make a good
I
one.
haven't seen the new one yet, but I don't think it's going to be good because
Yeah,
they
that's
just
just
can't.
the internet does that. Jordan in the chat earlier mentioned social media, but yeah, social media just does that to people's brains, where it's like, oh my God, use some critical thinking.
Well,
For the love of God, I'm begging you.
to circle it back and to close because we're becoming the problem,
We
um,
are.
is the fact that just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's accurate, doesn't mean it's true. They may very well believe it and they may think it's true, but you can certainly start from a faulty assumption.
Yeah, and also the intention of the thing. Like,
Yeah.
why? What are you there? Like, look, we mentioned Andrew Wilson. See, I know his name now. Divorced dad energy, Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, he
Seriously,
does.
give me such
He
divorced
does.
dad energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but he enters into debates with the intention of making embarrassing or making the other person look bad or look stupid or like to make himself look smart. It's not what we're doing, right? Right.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it. That's what makes it different. I just
That that
I
would
think
be yeah, that's a case of don't listen. This is just good life advice. Don't make the case that only your kind can open a pickle jar because somebody might make you open a pickle jar and then you'll fail to do so.
and it'll look hilariously embarrassing.
It was so funny, dude. I'm not even.
He said some like he's one of those guys where I watch it and then I accidentally rewatch it because I go, what?
What the hell did
What?
he just say?
What? Or the same thing with, I mean, yeah, all those guys. They've all got their own all individual series where they say a thing, and then they say it, empirically, like and then
That being
oh,
said,
it drives me crazy.
I would really actually enjoy sitting down and talking with him because, again, I would go into that not necessarily like knowing that I probably will defeat his points and arguments, but I would go in there. It's like, bro, I genuinely want to understand like where did these ideas come from
Right?
for you? Like where did these? Because I think you would uncover a picture of a lot of pain,
Oh,
and
always.
this is clearly lashing out, and like brother, you could be so much happier if you just let this shit go.
Right? A lot of those guys, it's like, yeah, they don't know what she's talking about.
Who
Um,
probably won't want to what?
um,
I know the fans are coming for me, and you know what? That's okay.
Yeah, shit
Um,
like that the Jordan Peterson shit you reacted to, the Jubilees and those are so long as we continue to seeing the other side as something you need to defeat. Like and to be fair, the left is just as guilty of this. Like as soon as you're like, okay, they're
that's why
Republican,
that's why
so I'm gonna
Jubilee
write them
exists.
off. Yeah, well, yeah, to be sensational. Um, but that's my thing. It's like so long as like I see a lot of videos from the left and I understand, yeah, you're gonna call me a filthy centerist. Um, but when I see videos from people on the left being like, oh, all they're painting everyone with a generalized brush and being like they're all that's not gonna help us move forward. That's what didn't stop Trump is writing off the people who voted for him.
Oh, Lynn,
Hey,
Lynn. I think I missed a message there somewhere, Haley, because that comment didn't make sense until you just said.
it didn't pop up in
And to be fair, and again, I don't know the guy, but I also I do believe Lin Manuel Miranda probably doesn't take criticism well.
I don't know. I don't know. He's a hard. I may yeah.
Well, to be fair, he can take my comments and he can wipe his tears away with all of his money.
Well, that's what I was gonna say earlier. I was just picturing the camera panning over when you were like, I don't care for Hamilton. Just the camera panning over and him holding all of his Tonys, being like, and Grammys, being like, "That's your loss." I think
Guess
I won't
you
lose one.
guess you're not in the room where it happened, bitch.
Right. I don't think I'm gonna lose much sleep over this.
Yeah, I don't,
Uh,
truly don't. But that's what I always say about Robert Pattinson, because my hate for Robert Pattinson is notorious. But I always say it's like Robert Pattinson doesn't know I exist, and if he did, he'd dry his tears of shame with all of his fucking money.
right? All of the money. All of the money. And
Patty
I feel
LaPone.
like, to be fair, Patty LuPone was making some people angry with
Yeah.
something. Everyone was mad at Patty
That
LuPone.
being said, I actually would sit down and talk with Lin-Manuel Miranda about because, and this may very well be the case. Maybe I just don't get Hamilton. Maybe I just don't
Yeah,
get it.
it'd be your white whale.
There's no white in it except for the bad guys.
Except for the bad
Well,
guys. Like,
hey, so it is my white whale.
yeah, yeah. My white whale is Kevin Smith. He's the guy. He's my dream guest. Like if I can get him, I feel like he's like of the
Oh no,
famous people. He feels
Lin-Manuel
perfectly
Miranda
attainable.
is not my white whale. In fact, I
No.
did tag in a very desperate attempt. I did tag Jordan Peterson in that video. So
Ah,
you never know. You never know.
yeah,
Maybe I'll watch him and be like, somebody's actually defending me, eh?
right. I'm not taking a bunch of shit on the internet.
Well, you are, but you're used to it.
I will say, yeah, as well. There's certain times where like, yeah, politician Bernie Sanders. I'm not a Bernie Sanders guy, but he said something on Joe Rogan which impressed me. Which Joe Rogan was like, "Are you going to run for president?" And he was like, "Nope, I'm too old." And I'm like, "Good for you,
I mean,
good
yeah,
for you."
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, that's
That's
fair. That's
totally fair.
fair. I'm gonna go retire to my mansion in Vermont, or I'm gonna die in office.
It's like, Joe, you have to understand. Do you know how many times I had to go to the bathroom on the plane here?
I'm going to the bathroom right now, Joe.
It's
I'm going
getting to
right
the
now.
point. It's getting to the point where I cannot effectively do the job. I don't
Yeah.
want to be sitting in. I'm picking on Bernie. It's like I don't want to be sitting in the situation room, and all of a sudden I have to go make a spritz.
I mean, you could be like Trump and just go in his pants. Allegedly, 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 allegedly. Ah, fuck it. I'm
That's
not
the
getting
moment
into
whenever he's
it.
giving a
Apparently,
speech.
he shits his pants. It's what I've heard.
He's on stage giving a speech, and then there's this random pause, and he just kind of looks out.
No, I'm saying it in jest, but no, like legit. That like there's clips of like him sitting next to I can't remember what her name was, but it was this one woman, and she's sitting there, and all of a sudden she makes a face, and I was
Have
like,
you
he,
have you noticed though when he's having a room in having a room when he's having a meeting in like the Oval Office and he's sitting in that he sits in these chairs in a very particular way, and I'm not saying this is why he does it, but he sits in a way where he could easily like because he's like right on the edge and he could very easily just pivot a little bit and just let out a fart and not like in
look, man.
obviously.
The body gets harder to control with age. I understand. I understand he's got a crack whenever.
That being said, I feel like Trump is the kind of guy who would own it.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
Well, I just yeah. That is a rumor. A rumor. There's a
actually,
rumor.
you know that it had to have happened once, where he's in a meeting with JD Vance and some world leader, and he just lets a silent one, and then at some point he can tell that everybody can smell it, and he just looks at her, he's like, "Well, JD, I don't think you should have any more tacos today." I don't know why that was Ronald Reagan for a minute. I don't think you should have any more tacos. Well, JD, I don't think you should have any more tacos today.
It's just because yeah, there's a while there where there's a rumor that he wears. I think I made the joke about. I made a joke about it. He's your first Depends president, but
No, that
there's
was
a joke that
Biden. Biden totally wore diapers too, bro.
there's rumors like that Trump also wears diapers, and I just like to think there's some poor intern who has to be the one to bring him new ones.
Well, of course, that's a job with honor. And
Presidential diaper.
you think they're gold? I feel like Trump would wear gold colored
Absolutely,
diapers.
he's got gold plated.
They match my shoes.
See, and what's funny is you could take that joke. Like there's
Oh, bro,
many
funny
people.
is funny. Funny is funny. You
I'm the
know,
same way. I'm the same way. Like I'm like funny is funny. I don't like
and
sometimes you
to be
say something
fair,
that's
some
legit funny.
because some of these Trump jokes are just not good, and I'm like, that's not funny, But
Yeah.
some of them are brilliant, and they are funny. Basically, any Shane Gillis Trump joke is probably funny, but any first of all, Alec Baldwin is such a low quality Trump impression.
It's
It's
not a
not
good
good.
one. It's not a
It's
good
not good.
one. It's like it started off okay, and it's gotten lazier over the. But to be
Shane
fair,
Shane Gillis has the best one,
oh,
dude.
um, I sort of watched your guys' review on Mickey 17 because I watched that movie, and you guys were the first people I thought of. In Mickey 17, Mark Ruffalo is just Donald Trump, right?
He's even doing a really bad Trump
It's
impression.
a horrendous impression, right?
Now I
It's not
don't,
just me.
to be fair, I think it might intentionally be a bad impression so as to not be too on the nose, but it was pretty on the nose. And
Okay, it was like
the
it pulled me out of
reason
the
for,
movie.
now I was primed a little bit for that because I had read, all right, sorry, I watched a review that was basically saying like, it was the critical triggers like Mark Ruffalo is just Trump. And so
Oh,
I'm like,
interesting.
I don't know about that because I give filmmakers the benefit of the doubt, but I'm sitting in the theater, I'm like, wow, he's just Trump.
He's just Trump. He's just the most unrealistic bit about that movie was that his Melania loved him. That was the most unrealistic bit about that movie. In a movie with Robert Pattinson clones. But no, I had no idea it was coming, so it pulled me, and that was all I could think about. Like as much as I don't like Trump. I cannot stand bad Trump impressions. It's getting hack.
If you're
Even
gonna
I'm
do
like
it,
it's hack.
yeah, if you're gonna do it right. Do it
Do it
right.
right. I don't. I mean, to be fair, I slip into the. It's hard not to, but yeah, it pulled me out. Like so, yeah. Yeah. It's not the thing I'm looking forward to in the next like decade of bad political dramas where the president is Trump.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's coming though, so take it or
It's
leave it.
coming. It's coming.
Take it or leave it. Well, anyway, Justin, we're becoming the problem. So thank you for coming on. And
No
hopefully
problem.
if you are watching this, not to sound like we're like a big deal or anything, but like hopefully this is an example of maybe just if you're going to be having these sorts of discussions, please just go into it because this is the only way it's going to get better. Is if you go
Yeah.
into it not necessarily wanting to win or own. Don't go
Ooh,
into own.
before we wrap up, the point I wanted to summate on. We tried ignoring you guys. Sorry.
Oh, Canada.
No, I meant we tried ignoring like on the left. The left tried to ignore the Trump supporters. What post 2020. They all went, "Hey, if we all la 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 pretend this didn't happen and bury our heads in the sand, they'll just go away." And that didn't happen because we didn't engage with them, right? So, hey, maybe if we engage with them, we won't wind up with another Trump.
Fully. Yeah, I would say that's pretty good advice.
Or a worse Trump. I don't think we could get a worse Trump.
No, you can always do not make the mistake of believing it can't get worse because trust me,
That's
it
true.
can. It
No.
absolutely can.
I mean, he's already kind of a cartoonish buffoon. I don't know how you could be a more cartoonish buffoon.
Well, no, but imagine Trump less entertaining.
Yeah, I just
Because at
don't
the
think it would
very
succeed
least,
as well.
that's true. That's true. So that would kind of be like a
Part of his
self-defeating
appeal
prophecy.
is, yeah, part of his appeal is that's why guys like JD Vance or not Gavin Newsom, the Florida man
Oh,
didn't don't work.
DeSantis.
DeSantis don't Trump ideas without Trump's charisma and personality
It
don't
doesn't
land.
work. It doesn't work. And it won't. That's why I'm saying like running JD Vance on a MAGA platform would be the worst idea ever because he just
Yeah.
can't because you just don't buy it coming from him.
I read your book, JD. I know where you're coming from. Also,
Did
I
you
think
really?
like I didn't. I was tempted to watch the movie. No, the thing I think that's gonna sink MAGA fundamentally is weirdo guys like Peter Thiel. But why did they put Peter Thiel on camera? What are you doing? Having him be like, yeah, I don't care if humans die. Yeah, that shit's gonna sink you, man.
Funnily enough, what was very interesting that happened is the movie
Citizen weirdo.
the movie made based on JD Vance's book because that movie was released before he was Trump's running mate and everybody loved it when it first came out and now it's hot garbage. I find that really interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think we need to go back to. I think Tim Waltz made a mistake by stopping saying that they were weird. Like that really seemed to bother JD Vance and Trump. Like I really would think we should go back to that calling them weird. Although I think JD Vance is weirder than Trump. Anyway,
He
that's a fun note to end on.
he's a different kind of weird. Now JD has his moments, but that's another podcast. But every politician has their moments, right? But
Yeah.
thank you for enjoying this episode of the Arete Podcast. We will see you guys next month. I don't know what we'll be discussing yet because I haven't lined up a guest yet, but we will figure it out. But be sure to check out the Spur of the Moment podcast and
Yeah,
our
if you
friends
come
at CV
subscribe
Works.
to us, if you come subscribe to us, I have to do a real quick plug. I will eat a spicier pepper. We're negotiating what Jordan's gonna eat because for a fun plug, you can go over to my channel and there's a video. It's called this podcast went off the end of this podcast went off the rails where my co-host Jordan ate a bunch of lemon extract and his face made a really funny face as he puckered his face and his eye went all weird. We're gonna do another thing like that at each 100 intervals leading up to 500, where I will eat a habanero pepper. So that's all. That's why you should come subscribe to the Spur of the Moment podcast.
You should, and we will see you guys next month on the Arete Podcast. Until then, just talk with more nuance and understanding and civility.
Listen.
Listen here.